might have to leave at a moment's notice, so.
Yeah, I think he's gonna jump on via Zoom, it sounded like though too. Let me go back to my office. I've got some handouts for you. And nobody is recording, but nobody is on, I don't think, right now, so.
Starting a little early.
Well, I can pause the recording, sir. So let me pause.
About it a little, about how I want to hold, whether it's students, teachers, schools, individual schools, or districts, hold them necessarily accountable for the results, considering there are a lot of different factors that are going to go into those tests. Getting enough students there, in this current situation, whether some students are virtual and in person. And I think a lot of people just want to do the test to see where everyone's at. And I think that goes back to the BEP Review Committee recommendations of, increased funding for RTI and counselors and school nurses. When those students come back and we start getting a better idea of where they're at academically, we may have more students in tier 2 and tier 3 for RTI that are going to require additional intervention that they didn't have before to get them back to where they need to be. So that's why it's important to, I think that's one of the reasons that priority was on there, because that setting of RTI is where those kids get the individual instruction based on their area where they need help the most. And so I think that's another recommendation that's going to play a big part over the next few years, because it's not going to be an immediate change to get students back to where they are. It's going to take time and resources to do so. So those are two big things that I just wanted to touch base on that I think are really, really important in the upcoming year.
Ben, are you hearing a lot about summer school? I know from the department and maybe from legislators too, about funding LEAs for summer school next summer.
I think there's a lot of conversations going on. I think that's one of them, about not necessarily that aspect of it. That's an example or a possible outcome. I think everyone knows on the same page of something has to be done. Using kind of the same school model, there's not enough hours in the day, I think, to account for the quarter of the year students lost last year and then the situations they're facing this year. There's just not enough time. Plus, when they come back, you guys are expected to get them where they should be this year. So you're taking a year and a half almost and trying to put it into 1 year, and there's just not enough hours in the day. So I think that could possibly be a proposal of summer school or some kind of program, maybe similar to Read to Be Ready that we had several years ago, just something additional for those students that need help the most.
That is a big thing, Ben. I mean, literally about how far our students, are trying to catch up, and then those, like we're on, we're distance learning right now, and just text a moment ago that Rutherford County's gone distance learning. Wilson County's already distance learning, and all around us are distance learning. I was on with the Coffee County director earlier today, and they're looking at doing distance learning if they can. Right now his staff is okay, but they're starting to have staffing issues. So that's become a big thing right now about, more and more distance learning. And then it depends on who you talk to in regard to January, what we're going to find when we come back from Christmas. It's really some really struggling times here for education, period, across the board, across the state too.
I think you bring up a good example with staffing, and I've talked to some districts. It's not necessarily where the students have been in contact, but maybe the teacher has, and they can't find someone else to come into the classroom. They're just not available. You only have so many people that can do that, and so many people that are willing to do something like that. I mean, bless everyone I have 4 kids, and I couldn't imagine a classroom of 6-year-olds all day. That'd be something else. So our teachers right now are doing an extraordinary job in the current times and dealing with things that are we've just never even thought of before.
Hey, Ben, this is Wade. Is any system that you've heard talked about extending the school year out a little bit, a few weeks at the end of this year, this coming year?
Some districts are looking at the different options that are available. I mean, that is an option. The minimum requirement in law is the minimum of 180 school days. So there's nothing to prevent you from going longer than that. Unfortunately, in every situation like that, it's a money issue. It's having enough money to pay the teachers,
More stress on them.
and the support staff. If you're going to extend the school day or extend the school year, you're going to run buses. So having the funds to account for all that, to address those different issues. And that's why I think if there is some kind of legislation or something regarding summer school or some type of summer program, funding is going to be critical for that, because right now, our funding doesn't account for something like that to take place. That's why when you had those programs in the past, like the Read to Be Ready, there was additional funding provided by the state and federal government that those programs used to support their operations. So I think it's going to be critical that funding comes down along with any requirement or option for summer school.
So that may play into the same thing, and it's not necessarily extending it, but the trouble that I see with that too is getting our faculty, our teachers are very, very tired at this point. I mean, they have been doing things we'd never thought before, and they're really, there's fatigue going on within not only our district, but across the state again. And getting people that won't like to do summer school would be a challenge, I think too, down that pipe.
Yeah, that may certainly be a challenge, having people willing to take on that extra responsibility. Certainly.
Okay. All right, Ben, anything else you would like to following Miss Lillian's presentation there? Go ahead, Ben, with anything else you have, particularly on BEP issues and things of that nature coming down from TSBA. We just sent our policy reviews. I think we had about 10 or 15 policies that we just reviewed that we sent to Jennifer. So those have been updated according to an email I got earlier from her. So I appreciate the quick turnaround.
Yeah, no problem. We are in our time period for our annual audit. One of the things we do is we go through every school board's policy manual and look at the policies that are required by law to make sure you have updated policies. There's about 80 of those policies that you have to have, and we want to make sure that those policies are compliant. Things change on a regular basis, whether it's state law, whether the state board changes policies or rules, or the federal government changes regulations. So it's just important, we think, to have that annual review to let you guys know, hey, here's some recommended things you can do. As far as the BEP goes, we are, session starts the second Tuesday in January. So it's right around the corner, after Christmas, it's coming up. So I think a lot of conversations will be happening about funding and how that can occur. I know the state is continually looking at the budget numbers and revenue numbers to see what options are there. And I think the key is to continuously engage your legislators. I know they want to hear from you, and you are dealing with the day-to-day issues. So providing them with input to let them know what you need is key.
And we'll be talking with, of course, I do usually a weekly thing with Mr. Pody and Representative Boyd. So they are very, very good about communication with us here in our district. But one of the things too, we're doing Upper Cumberland. We have a meet with them at 9:30 on Thursday, where we're going to be all of the Upper Cumberland directors will be getting together with multiple ones across the Upper Cumberland. So that's pretty good. And like I say, Representative Boyd and State Senator Pody are very, very good about listening and taking our things to the legislature, taking whatever we desire. You know, I was in communication with them nearly on a really a daily basis during some of those days in the General Assembly, because they wanted our opinion. And I think that we've got a great relationship there, and we want to continue that.
They are both very engaged with their constituents in the district, or the school districts in their district. They're very engaged, and I know they reach out to you all on a regular basis and want that feedback. So I think they are certainly more than willing to help. And it's great to know that they're meeting with you all on a regular basis. I know we've always had great interaction with them. So I think that's fantastic.
Okay, let's go around the horn here with the board. Mr. Chairman, y'all, you got him here, so.
Sure, somebody sent some questions.
I asked all my questions within 2 weeks ago.
Well, the ladies, you're going to see them in January 7 and 8. So you'll see the ladies on the board at that orientation. So thank you for expanding that to get more board members there at the orientation meeting.
Absolutely. We're working hard with where we're having the location of the meeting to make sure we're meeting all social distance requirements and the different CDC guidelines. So it's certainly we were glad we were able to take all those guidelines and all the requirements and put them in place to where we could still have an orientation, as opposed to 2 days of Zoom meetings. I'm sure hopefully they'll appreciate the in-person versus the 2 days of Zoom.
I already do. I'm very thankful.
Ben, that was a very, very good meeting. I want to give you guys kudos for the way you put it on and the information we received. It was very informative, kept us engaged. It was very well done.
Well, thank you. We certainly appreciate that. And I'll pass it along to Tammy and Jennifer and Emily, the other presenters as well.
I didn't get the full effect of the convention though, Ben. You know, all the vendors and all the hoopla.
Yeah, we had to cancel convention this year. Keeping our fingers crossed that things are going to get back to normal soon. I think we're all hoping that.
All right, any additional questions for Mr. Torres? Okay, and that will conclude our broadcast, and we appreciate everybody joining us tonight. And thank you, Ben.
I sent Ben a couple, right, Ben? I sent you a couple of topics, just some short answers to it. You remember those?
Oh, yes. One question came up. Sorry about that. One question came up about transportation and how transportation works in the BEP. So if you look in the BEP handbook for computation, it's actually on page 54, I believe. But the way it looks at a 3-year average of transportation costs. So it looks at the miles transported, the number of students, and it's a ratio of that year to the 3-year average. So when you look at transportation funding, it's not necessarily in a vacuum of that specific year. It's over a time period. And they use a multiple regression formula to kind of project out what you would need for that year. So when you look at your BEP sheets that you get from the department, they'll have a overall number in there total. And I think I looked at the numbers for Cannon County. I want to say transportation with all the allocations was right around 811. Of course, that includes both the state and the local. So that doesn't include, so because of that, you got to apply the fiscal capacity formula as well. So that doesn't mean 811. It's just once you apply the fiscal capacity, the state will spit out a number basically of what you're going to get for that. So the 3-year rolling average for transportation. And then one other question, rezoning. So certainly rezoning is always a big issue on a lot of districts when they start to talk about that. And there's positives and negatives to it. Obviously, the negatives are whether you're expanding and opening new schools or you're contracting and closing schools. your funding is going to be affected to an extent with rezoning because of the way the BEP works. For the most part, it doesn't look at individual schools. It looks at the overall number of students you have in the district. Only in certain specific circumstances does it take into individual schools into account. So if you, let's say you rezone to consolidate, you could have savings there. Let's say you don't consolidate and you keep the same number of schools and you move students around. Depending on how you move them around, you could get a situation where you do get, more money for a principal, for instance. You go from maybe a half a principal to a full principal. But on the flip side of that, if you move students around, you have to keep in mind student teacher ratios. So you could move a certain amount of students in the grade band to where you're required to have an additional teacher in one area at a different school, but you don't reduce your teaching numbers at the old school. So in that case, you may have to hire an additional teacher that offsets any additional money you get for that principal. So I always describe the BEP, there's 47 components, and when you pull one lever, you're going to pull 46 other levers. And being able to project that out and understand that just because this area may have an improvement, you may see a loss in another area. A lot of times it's a pie, and the pie is as big as it is. And when you start to shift things around, that doesn't necessarily mean the pie gets any bigger. You're just reallocating the size, and where you divvy that money up. So certainly when you're thinking about or looking at rezoning or any of those issues, take the whole into account of not just the individual areas that you want to seek improvement in, but what effect will it have in other areas? So that would be my recommendation there, of looking at the BEP and your funding holistically when you start to have those conversations. And I will tell you, the Department of Ed is great. Mary Ann Dursky at the department, she always takes the time to answer questions, emails, phone calls, and to talk through different issues. I think she is a fantastic resource for school districts. So if you all have any questions or just want to, run some things by her to see exactly how it will work, she is certainly the guru in that area, and she is a fantastic resource.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, any other board members? Mr. Chairman?
I don't have anything. Does anybody?
All right, folks, we appreciate you listening in tonight for this informative session. And our next our Board of Education meeting will be in January. And give everybody a Christmas break, and everybody stay safe. And then we'll look at our next meeting. We Can't Get Board of Education workshop will be on January the 11th. And that will be coming up. And then our next board meeting will be on January the 14th is our next board meeting. So thank you, Ms. Lillian, and also thank you, Ben, for the meeting tonight. All right, any other things before we close?
Thank you, Ben and Lillian.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.